Listeners, we will get to introductions, but first I want to ask Stewart. Stewart, tell me something that you believe about real estate that might surprise us.
Well, despite what you might have heard, the office market is not dead. And I can expand on that now if you'd like, or we can get into that later on.
Let's get into it later on. Listeners, welcome to the Source of Commercial Real Estate, where we talk to the experts in non-residential commercial real estate so you can grow your business, find a competitive advantage, and use real estate to live the life that you want. I'm your host, Jonathan Hayek. I'm a former public school teacher who found financial freedom through residential real estate investing, and now I invest in larger commercial properties, particularly small industrial properties. And today I have the privilege of talking to Stewart Heath. He is a principal at Harvard Grace Capital, and Stewart brings a ton of various business experience to the table. He's been the COO and the CFO of multiple businesses. He has a wealth of business expertise and still provides some fractional CFO consulting services. He is now also investing in commercial real estate through Harvard Grace Capital. And we already heard that he is not afraid of the office asset class. And so we'll certainly be talking about that today. Stewart, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Birmingham, Alabama, where we're looking at a new property. And I am delighted to be here with you and talk real estate.
It's great to have you, Stewart. And I'd like to begin by you telling us a little bit more about your unique background and how you found yourself in commercial real estate.
Sure. Well, I am a CPA primarily because my dad was a CPA, and it seemed like majoring in accounting was a good idea at the time. Little did I know that once I started my public accounting career that I had this entrepreneurial DNA, and you can't get away from that. But the accounting background, training, and experience is absolutely invaluable in most any endeavor, but certainly in real estate where numbers play such a key role in identifying, underwriting, and managing your target acquisitions. It really all does come down to the numbers, as well as a few other more intangible things. So real estate is natural for me. I really got here because after I left the employment of a international accounting firm and started my own local firm, I picked up a whole lot of clients, and I declare half of them ended up being in real estate. And I really just followed a lot of people that I came to know and respect. Some of them are still my clients today after 38 years. And they've just made, like you said in the beginning, that they've found financial independence by investing in real estate, because it's not a get rich quick scheme. It's a get rich slow scheme. And if you're persistent and disciplined about it, you will grow significant amounts of wealth doing real estate over time.
I've heard from other CPAs that got involved in real estate by vicariously living through their clients. And they, were working closely with their clients, and they saw their clients, their real estate investor clients, making all this money in real estate, and found that, wait a second, they're not paying any taxes, or they're paying very little taxes.
Yeah.
Why aren't I doing this? Do you have a similar story to that?
Totally. And I never did it for tax reasons. It is an accidental benefit. I'm the classic professional, or the cobbler's children have no shoes kind of thing. I never did good tax planning for myself. I have been able to help people plan and save literally millions of dollars in taxes over the years. Never really applied that knowledge to myself. But obviously, as I've gotten into real estate, the taxes are a side benefit. I've gotten into real estate mainly for the capital growth and the recurring cash flow pieces, because I'm a CPA. Yes, I understand taxes, but taxes have never been my motivation. My motivations are lifestyle, and I want to do what I want to do, and not have to do what I don't want to do, and any kind of recurring income plan can do that for you. And I think real estate is the most um, it's the most traditional, it's the most reliable, and the most sustainable recurring income plan on the planet Earth.
It's part of the reason I love real estate is there are lots of different reasons that people can be involved in real estate. Tax
Yes.
benefits are some, capital appreciation, cash flow, those things that you mentioned, all perfectly valid reasons to get involved in real estate.
Yeah.
Stewart, tell me about Harvard Grace Capital. Tell me about the kind of work that you're doing. What kind of deals are you interested in?
Yeah. So, unlike some folks that do what I do, we are not focused on one particular asset class, and there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, there's a lot of wisdom in that. Um, but we've chosen to focus on a geography, which is the area that we live in, one I've always lived in, which is sort of up and down I-65 between Nashville and Huntsville, Alabama. And this is an area that I know. I've lived here for many, many, many years, and and I'm the kind of person that I really can't understand something until I go experience it myself. So it's hard for me to imagine investing in a building halfway across the country. Well, and I'm not the passive investor. I'm the sponsor. I'm the active investor. So I need to be boots on the ground. So that is our philosophy. We will and we do, and we will target any asset class, commercial asset class, in this geography, southern Middle Tennessee and northern Alabama, including multifamily, storage, office, suburban office, medical office, and retail. There's just most of these areas are either tertiary small markets, or they are high end, high income submarkets of suburbs of Nashville and Huntsville, and the other part of what we target are assets that will throw off cash flow from day one. So we're not doing any development. We're not doing any value adds in a physical sense. We do buy a lot of properties that we can add value to just from better management, better leases, more aggressive income generation, better tenants, things of that nature. And that doesn't cost any money. It usually just costs time. But generally, when we buy an asset, it's going to cash flow from day one for our investors, and it's our purpose that we want to see that income increase over time.
Makes a ton of sense. And I think having a competitive advantage, not just in asset class, sounds like you're asset class agnostic a little bit,
We are.
but your competitive advantage is geographical. And so it sounds like you are really trying to dominate that I-65 corridor between Nashville and Huntsville, Alabama. We hear a lot about Nashville, not quite as much about Huntsville. And sounds like you're looking for day one cash flow and maybe some room to add some value through lease up and
Correct.
improving leases and management. Tell me a little bit more about your buy box in terms of single tenant, multi-tenant, expiring leases, stabilized leases, well-located properties or path of progress. Tell me a little bit more about your buy box and what types of properties pique your interest.
It's an excellent question. Never been asked that in that way before. So we generally have not, I don't think I ever will do a single tenant property. As we're syndicating equity for others, there needs to be a job for us to do, essentially. And so if you are an investor and you like the Dollar Generals of the world or the Family Dollars or those kinds, knock yourself out. I have investors who do those who also invest with us, and I freely advise them on what I think about the locations of those. And I got nothing bad to say, but there's just you're just extending credit to one person. And we've recently seen, and here's really the reason. I'm really old. I've been around a while. I've seen Dollar General close hundreds of stores all at once back during the great financial crisis. We've just seen Family Dollar do that. And having a single tenant property, you are always subject to the mercy of whatever somebody in some C-suite somewhere across the country will say, you know, close Huntsville. That could be 5 stores or whatever. And whether or not the market they're in is good or not, they might be closing stores for completely different reasons than location economics. So you're just one decision away from having a store that might be useless to any other buyer, any other tenant, other than perhaps a liquor store or something like that. So again, does that happen often? No, but it does happen, and I've seen it happen 2 or 3 times in my career. So we like multi-tenant, and they sort of support each other. And we like to see leases that are staggered out in maturities over time. So I call that stabilized leasing. And what we like is to see leases that already have escalators built in. But when there's not, and we can still do a deal that's cash flowing, that's our value add. When leases come up for maturity, we will put back in what we consider to be an appropriate and correct commercial lease. And I'm thinking primarily retail and office, because those are the ones with their longer term leases. And whenever possible, we will move them to triple net as well and push as many operating costs back to the tenant as possible. That's a trend we've been seeing coming across the country. I first saw it in Nashville 8 or 9 years ago. It's very popular moving through, and very little pushback on the part of the tenants. And it's just from a property owner's standpoint, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, you got your base rent going up, 3 or 4% every year, and you're not worried about the increase in costs. The only thing you're worried about is the only thing you really should be worried about, which is vacancy. And if you work hard and keep your tenants happy by treating them well and taking care of things that you're supposed to take care of, your vacancy will stay at a minimum too. So that's our buy box. Kind of boring stuff, really, but it just cash flows. So that's kind of where we try to play.
Are there certain cash on cash metrics you're looking for on day one, or is it just kind of depend? If there's meat on the bone, maybe day one cash on cash is a little lower because there's more upside, or is there a certain metric you're looking for on day one in terms of cash on cash?
So our sort of minimum, and we beat this when we can, but it's difficult. Our kind of minimum is be able to deliver to the investor, all in after the purchase, a 5% annual cash on cash day one. And it can't stay there for much longer than just that first year. We want to see that going up at least to 6.5, if not 7 the second year, and into double digits by the third year. And a lot of that will have to do with built-in, already executed lease rent increases and things of that nature. But it's really very difficult to find a cash flowing deal at all. But then to get it at a price where you can deliver that, especially in today's interest rates, because when you're buying a stabilized property, you are essentially playing interest rate arbitrage between your cap rate and your interest rate. and you're trying to squeeze out a margin so that you can pay out a little bit of cash on cash in between those two. Not to get too technical on that, and I don't think that is for your audience, but if your interest rate and your cap rate, the rate at which you purchased it, are the same, there's no margin. That makes sense in most people, except for the portion that you put in as equity. But if you can, like this property we're buying right now, we're buying at a 8.75 cap for a medical office building, and we're financing at 7.8, 7.9. So we got us a little margin in there, and we're going to generate about 5.5% cash on cash year one. And just with built-in leases, without us doing a thing, just the operation of the lease, that will bump up to 7.2 in year two. And we will do some things in year 2 and year 3, and we'll get the NOI up. And at that point, we might refi, hopefully with lower interest rates, if the Fed ever lowers interest rates. And then we'll pull out some cash and keep on rolling. So,
Stewart, you began this conversation by advocating for investing in office space, and you're sitting in an office building right now that you're looking to purchase. It's a medical office building, but sounds like you're not afraid of the office asset class. So will you tell me a little bit more about that strategy and why you're not afraid of office right now?
Sure. The financial news media is in the business of selling news, and whenever they don't, and then the whole MO, and this is human nature really, their whole MO is just to over generalize everything. Just this morning, I heard on CNBC that the whole CRE market, commercial real estate market, is in turmoil. Really? Not in my world. And if that's not broad enough, then they might bring it down to office is in trouble. So, all right, people, calm down. There's at least 6 subcategories of office space. One of them we've already talked about, and that's medical office. Medical office didn't have any hiccups during COVID. Medical office there's more competition right now than on medical office properties that we pursue than any other asset class that we get into. Why is that? Because your doctor is not going remote. He's not coming to see you. And they spend hundreds and thousands of dollars building out their spaces so that they can put very expensive equipment in there so that you can come see them. The whole medical model, you say, well, what about telehealth? Yeah, that works. And it's very convenient for a lot of people. It gives access to healthcare for people. But in the day, you got anything more serious than strep throat or something, you're going to go see your doctor because you can't get an MRI over your iPhone yet. And there's just devices and things that you have to go to the professional, and it's not. I don't know that anybody has any idea, any notion that that's going to change in the next 10 years. Maybe it will. Technology changes everything. Technology has affected office. The other side of that is our first property, which we closed on in January of 22, is what I call suburban office. Some people will refer to that as service retail. And it's not Class A. It's drive-up parking, but it is an office building, and it's got dentists, and it's got State Farm agents and mortgage companies and all kinds of other different people who see their customers there. And so that to me is the dividing line of what office is in trouble and what office is not. If your building has customer-facing tenants in it, you're fine. And those properties are fine pretty much all over the country, and they're usually in the suburbs. It is the Class A and downtown properties central business district properties that the employees don't want to go to anymore. And those are the spaces where they were never anything more than gathering places for employees. That's not necessarily where they saw customers, whatnot. And those are the ones that are in trouble. And those are the ones that they'll figure something out. But it is certainly not the entire office market, or and medical office is a massive subcategory of quote office. Then you got the suburban office, which is every suburb of every big town has those. But it's not the ones with the marble bathrooms and the fancy glass doors and things like that. Call it a Class B, whatnot. We're very proud of our properties and we take really good care of it. And rents are going up and up and up and up every year. And every one of them that we've had is full now. It was full during the pandemic. It was full before the pandemic. So it's just an overgeneralization. Office is not dead. We see this from the media. We see it from many people. Like I say, it's human nature. The overgeneralization is overdone. If you recall, during the pandemic, there was another asset class that was declared dead: retail. And according to recent reports, what's the hottest class so far this year? Retail. And rates are just going through the roof. So, it's real estate's never dead, really. No.
I really appreciate just hearing your perspective and how you personally look at investing. And there's also a lesson in there to be careful about where you get your information and what type of information we're consuming. I've had those same experiences with people not in commercial real estate. And when I tell them I'm in commercial real estate, you told that story. I had the exact same conversation with someone. He said, commercial real estate? I thought that was going away. I thought that was dead. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's hard to have conversations with people that are getting that kind of information. So yeah, just again, thanks for sharing your perspective on the office asset class and how nuanced it is. I want to ask you about the debt that you're getting on your properties. You had mentioned earlier the type of debt that you're looking to get, I think, on this property that you're looking at. And I just would like to start it out as a little more open-ended with how are you experiencing the debt market? How are your relationships with your lenders? Are you having a relatively easy time getting debt on the properties you're purchasing?
Well, I don't like the easy word, but I will say there is plenty of debt to be had for a stabilized cash flowing asset. If you are a developer and you're trying to do development land, or if you're a new home builder and you're trying to get new construction financing, it is very challenging at the moment. It's challenging both in finding the banks who haven't quit the business, but let's just say they've cut back the amount of exposure they're willing to do. And let's face it, the housing market has slowed down in many markets. Not necessarily in the markets that I'm in, but still, many banks have slowed down. So here's one of my little sayings that I pulled together over the years. All real estate is local. We've all heard that before, but all financing is national. So even if you're dealing with a community bank who doesn't lend outside of 50 miles from and they've got plenty of money and it's a healthy market, their interest rates and their credit policies are still nationally oriented. Makes no sense to me, but that is the reality of life. So back to your question to me, I'm not having any trouble finding credit at reasonable LTVs, 70%, 75% max, which is just also our internal policy. the only problem is rate. And there's so many people, every time we do a deal, I have a lot of friends that are lenders and they want to do deals and they need to do deals. But I said, look, it's going to come down to rate and term. So give me the best interest rate and the longest amortization. Because what else is there? They are in fact competitors on commodities, which is dollars. So, answer your question. Yeah, there is still plenty of money to be lent out there. We have this year really gotten into working with brokers as well. Haven't closed a deal with a brokered loan, but some of the terms are very attractive. And sometimes it's easier to deal with your local relationships, but with banks that are stuck at 8.5%, maybe 8.25%, non-bank loans are still in the high sevens, and that makes a big difference. Makes a big difference to the bottom line.
In your conversations with lenders, what are some of the most important factors that they look at in terms of the deal? Is it like average lease term remaining with the tenants? Is it the type of property it is? What are some of the things that they're looking at that gets them comfortable with a certain deal? Maybe it's the people signing on the loan.
That's very important, but it's not the most important. You have that conversation about who's going to guarantee the loan later after they've already decided that the asset is worth them. But and kind of like us, their most important thing is location, quality of the asset, but really even more than that, who are the tenants? Because being a landlord is essentially an extension of credit. My third rule of investing is whatever business your landlord is, your tenants are in, the landlord is in too. And so we will shy away from things with independent restaurants in it. That doesn't mean we only like chains, but you show me a local Mexican restaurant operator who's got 2 or 3 other locations, I'm in. I mean, because the statistics of restaurant success increases tremendously once they've had a couple of units for 4 or 5 years, and that's just one example. We don't necessarily like things with tattoo parlors or other types of business. I'm not against tattoos and I'm not against vape shops. They just generally, as tenants, they're not longevity type tenants. We are definitely looking, we love doctors' offices. We like other types of retail and clothing stores and things that, you just know are going to be there for a while. So, and I think the lenders are very closely looking at tenant quality just as much as we are. After that, it's location, and then after that, it's who's the guarantor and what do they got. So.
Really helpful to hear your experience with that, Stewart. What are some of the best ways that you're finding deals and finding leads right now?
Yeah, it takes a number of years to get your deal flow sources going. The easiest way to do it is you get a subscription to CoStar and Crexi, and you put in your search parameters, and they'll email you leads every time there's an update or something that's in your area or parameters. And of course, and those are the publicly listed leads. Over time, you will make good relationships with brokers. I have a broker that I've worked closely with now for years, and I don't know how he does it. He is a master at bringing me off-market deals because he's constantly out networking, meeting people, and basically says, "Do you want to sell that?" I just think he's constantly asking people that, and sure enough, we have done 2 or 3 of his deals that he's brought to us that are quality deals that never hit the market, which just makes it easier to do because there's no competition. And so, but I still look at CoStar and Crexi several times a week. And I do network with many brokers. So it's like anything else. You just got to keep digging. You just build relationships.
Always helpful to have relationships with those brokers who are really embedded in the community and have great relationships and just seem to know everybody. And especially when they can bring you off-market deals, that is especially helpful. And then close those deals, establish a track record, and then the broker's more willing to bring you even more deals because they know that you're going to close. Stewart, how about in your experience raising capital right now? You had said that you have investors. Sounds like you raise capital. So what's your experience working with high net worth individuals and raising capital for your deals right now?
Many of them are holding on to their cash. But we've developed relationships there too. The secret to business is relationships, not just relation brokers, but you build good relationships of trust with your investors, and you'll start out with a few. And I think the first deal we did, we had 6 investors, and now we've had 46 different people invest with us, many of them multiple times. And we dabbled in a storage deal earlier this year that was an underperforming deal, so it was a little bit out of our wheelhouse and was going to be a bit of a turnaround situation. We managed some storage. We think we're pretty good at it, and we knew we could turn it around. But I got to tell you, our investor community, who we have built on cash flowing deals, wanted nothing to do with it. and lesson learned for us. But you talk to them a lot, but they say you got another cash flowing deal, we're in. But I think there's not a whole lot of venturism in the high net worth community. They understand the benefit and I think the difficulty of putting together a cash flow deal in any market, much less this one. And so they will jump on that right now. Otherwise, they're holding their cash. Because even if they invest in a cash flow deal with us today and they're making 5%, year one, they can get that at the bank, but they're not going to get tax benefits, capital appreciation, and the CD that they might get for 5% is not going to go to 6% next year. The bank, and unless it's locked up in a CD, the bank can change the rate the same day the Fed lowers rates too, so it's not locked in forever. Whereas when you got real estate, it's locked into lease contracts and stuff like that. So most high net worth investors understand that. So they're still looking for good cash flow assets.
What are your favorite sources for connecting with potential passive investors? Are these former clients and coworkers? Are you involved in community organizations? Where are you meeting potential passive investors for your deals?
Yeah, our first deals were done with former clients, and then even when I was running this CPA practice, I was a pretty good networker myself. So I go to at least 4 events a year and make relationships. I do podcasts, and I do get contacted from people who've heard podcasts before, and just to sort of supplement it all, we do an awful lot of social media, try to be educational, and we just try to be out there doing a lot of providing a lot of useful information, which I don't know that generates a lot of leads. I think it might solidify some leads. If somebody might hear me on a podcast, they might look at some of the stuff we've done, and then we got people who might hear this or see a post. join a newsletter from our website and stuff like that. But by far, the most successful thing, and I think a lot of people tell you, is networking, investor dinners, asking your current investors for introductions to other investors. It's good old fashioned sales, asking for the lead and meeting with them. I travel all over the Southeast to at least twice a year to meet with our people and just say, hey, thank you. I usually don't have a deal that I'm pushing, and it's kind of funny. And they say, all right, how much do you want now? I said, what are you talking about? I'm just here to say thanks. But within a few weeks of that, we will have a deal that we're ready to, and they're still remembering the nice steak that I bought them, and they open the email, and it's about making friends and building relationships.
Yeah, really,
Takes time.
really helpful to get your perspective on that. Stewart, as we wrap up our conversation, was there anything that we didn't touch on in regards to your investing philosophy, what Harvard Grace is doing, or anything else you want to make sure listeners hear?
Yeah, I think it's been a couple of pretty rough years in commercial real estate. This year far better than last year. I mean, there was hardly a deal to do because sellers were still trying to sell at 2021 values, but interest rates had gone up 5.5%, and you couldn't come to terms on anything. This year, there's deals getting done, but they are difficult to do. And so through all that, I've sort of honed my own 3 rules of investing in real estate. I've already touched on a couple. One's the first rule is location. And when I say location, we're not talking about the state of Tennessee. We're talking about super micro location. You've got to know the market. And if there's any passive investors out there, that's the one thing that you can underwrite and analyze as you're looking at going into a passive investment. The second one is you make your money on the buy, not the sell. If you buy the property wrong, you may never recover. If you do and you end up ultimately selling for a profit, you've still never made as much money as you would have had you bought it right to begin with. So there's just got to be so much emphasis and underwriting and analysis to make sure you buy it right. And that means you're going to walk away from a lot of deals because sometimes most of the time, you're just not going to come to terms with the seller. And the third one I've already talked about, it's the beginning and the end of the cash flow real estate business is tenant selection. It's whatever business your tenants are in, you're in that business too. And people say, there's nothing more expensive than an empty space. That's not true. There's nothing more expensive than a tenant in a space that's not paying. Because they can be in there using it, at least wear and tear, possibly damaging it. I'd much give me an empty space more than a non-paying tenant any day. And so I learned the hard way very early on in my real estate that take your time and analyze the tenant. And even sometimes, you're going to be wrong. Things happen, but those people don't usually cause you all kinds of other problems. But anyway, that's all I would add.
Stewart, this has been a very worthwhile use of our time. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm very grateful that you were able to take the time out and have this conversation. If listeners want to connect with you or Harvard Grace Capital, where would you like to send listeners to?
I would ask them to go to harvardgrace.com and noodle around, find our resources. There are lots of good resources like checklists for passive investors. It's going to cost you nothing but your email address. And really, I think you can find a wealth of information there. Also, if you go to the contact us, you can find me and you can find my Calendly link, and you are invited to book time with me because I will talk about real estate with anybody, anytime. So yeah, that's a genuine offer, and I invite you to do that.
Stewart, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening to it, and feel free to reach out to either one of us. We love talking about commercial real estate, and we would love to connect with you. Come back next week for another great interview. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.